Okay. All right. So thank you guys for coming. But as I've been going through this is kind of for my sanity as well as yours. I'm going to keep everything out here online. And turns out this isn't something you'll get to until the third workshop. But now with R, there's a package in R called R Markdown. And it's this wonderful way of combining documentation and report writing with all of the statistics and the graphics, and it's completely seamless. So you can write the entire thing, combining all of the analyses and documentation out to Microsoft Word. You can go to HTML and you can go to PDF. So we'll really get into that in the third workshop, which is later in March. But this is something called Gitbook, and this is one of these. If you've ever anybody heard of LeanPub? There's all of these now sort of open source book publishing things going on the web. This is one called Gitbook because it's hosted and connected to GitHub, and I'll show you guys what that looks like in a minute. But there's an R Markdown package called R Gitbook. And so I just had to try it out, and I was so excited that I actually got it working. And so I'm using that, and I've actually written this online book using R. And so it's a way for me to track it. And the other thing I liked about it that I wanted to play around with, especially for the students and stuff, is you can read it online. It goes straight to PDF, or there's also these two EPUB formats, the MOBI format and the EPUB format. Hey, go ahead and sign in, and there's some evaluation forms up front. So there's a link to this in the workshop thing. Hold on one second. So most of you guys that got the email. And so I was just going to show you guys a couple of things with this. So the workshop instructions, there's information here on R, where to go and get help, as well as information on installing R and RStudio. The other thing I did was try not to be too harsh, but I've been trying to set up my own channel. You can see the kind of music I listen to, but anyway, I'm trying to set up my own channel in YouTube. So I did send an email out with this, but anyway, I'll send it out again after the workshop, and I'll make sure I've got all the emails from everybody that attended. So, any of you guys have kids in Cub Scouts? So these are videos from Pinewood Derby 2 years ago. Anybody that's really would like to see Pinewood Derby races. Anyway, and this was my test. So this was the video I sent out last night that has stuff here on getting R and RStudio up and running. And so it just walks you through. And it's doing it on my computer, which is Windows 10. So for those of you that are on Macs, obviously it'll look a little bit different. But some of the same installation things, the path is the same. It's just you would download the installer for a Mac instead of Windows. The one thing that's a little bit different, I think, is perhaps setting up, again, this is when we get to workshop 3, in order to be able to knit documents out to PDF, to make PDF documents on the fly. There's a LaTeX converter that you have to download, and I think the piece for the Mac's a little bit different anyway. So maybe at the end of the workshop I can look over your shoulder on your Mac and we can figure that out, because I don't have a Mac to test it on. So that's there. And once I get the videos saved from today as well as Friday, I'll probably have to figure out how to chunk them out, because I'm not sure I can upload all 2 hours of video at once. I'll figure out how to do that and get them uploaded here. So, all right. Just a couple of things about R. So it is so worldwide. You can't hardly, as they say, swing a cat without hitting something about R. Or Python is the other big one. Any of you guys ever heard of the Python lab notebook? Anyway, there's a big push, especially in the biological sciences and computational sciences, that people are now generating these lab notebooks, and it's all online, it's all shared and open and all that kind of thing. So there's some things like that going on in R as well. So it started with the R project. I'll make this a little bit bigger. I originally learned, well, really S, on a Unix platform when I first started, so I'm so happy it's all in Windows now. And there's some information here. The other thing that's nice about there's actually conferences. There's this R journal that has information about the software and new updates that come out to the software. So on one hand, it's open source software, which means that's good and bad. It's free, but it's has worldwide contributors. There's no sort of one central. It's not like going to SaaS where you have the SaaS company and the corporation, and there's vetting and testing and all of that. That said, the CRAN project. So if I come down here, when you click on about, let's see, not our Foundation. All right, sorry. So if I actually click on, oh, that's the mirror. Hold on. Where's the actual? I don't think that takes you to CRAN though. I was trying to, hold on, I can just Google it. So this is actually, and this is in the little installation video, so this is where you go and actually get the R core software, as well as I think there's now 7,000 packages, which are like add-ons. Depending on, like if you had something specific, like you were doing an interesting analysis in ecology, they have packages that are very specific to the kinds of analyses that you would see and do in ecology. There's tons of stuff for psychology. It's really interesting. But this group here, they actually go through, and when you, like if I sat down and wrote a package, like an add-on or a suite of tools that I wanted to provide back out to people, if I upload it on CRAN, it actually goes through error checking, code validation, and some other stuff. So while they won't necessarily endorse the functionality that I'm publishing, they at least check my code to make sure that it's not, just, I don't know what the right word is, reasonably error-free, but again, it's an open source environment. There's a little bit of buyer beware. It's not like you're going to download viruses or anything, but anyway, so there are some checks and balances. I encourage you to kind of look through these links. I've got links set up here direct for the manuals and frequently asked questions. Excuse me. There are also some good journals and things out here. There's Journal of Statistical Software. So like if you find something, it's like, wow, I really want to know, can I do, let's say, reliability analysis on, a questionnaire or an instrument? There's probably somebody that's written a package on doing reliability analysis. And so a lot of times what will happen is the package will get published, and then someone will publish a user article in the Journal of Statistical Software. And so that's usually a lot of times a great place to go and say, okay, you have the official documentation, but as you'll see here in a minute, the help manuals sometimes aren't that great with the examples. So people usually provide like examples or exemplars out on the web. So sometimes you have to do just a little bit of digging. There are literally thousands of books. There's a link here that takes you to a website that talks about, and it's actually an annotated bibliography of reasonably recent books out there. The R journal, bioconductor. And so how many of you guys are doing something in around genetics, any of the microbiome, omics? Yeah. So even if you're not doing these analyses, the people that you're working with more likely are here. And so like Andy, I know you're working on stuff with like flu and looking at virus strains. So I took a course last summer at University of Washington. They had a whole biostatistics summer institute and big data and stuff. And one of the modules that I took was focused on bioconductor. And I'll admit, I was able to run the code, but I had no idea what I was doing with the genes and looking at the different viral strains. And it was cool. So, but bioconductor is another place that a lot of packages and add-ons for R get posted, and these are very well vetted. This is even more vetted than people that post on CRAN. So, but it is sort of specific to the biosciences and bioinformatics. Sorry. All right. Information here on installing R. You basically go and pick it out, and so right where I was, so like if you're, I don't think anybody in here is on Linux, but the Mac installer is here, and it'll. So they included the R tools. Oh, that's good to know. So in Windows, what she's referring to, Gina, does Gina is referring to, in Windows you download the base package and then you can download R tools. R tools right now for what we're doing would be optional. It's helpful on some of the more advanced stuff later on, or if you want to make your own packages. So I'll admit I'm still learning this myself. So, okay. And if you click on the base package here, it'll tell you, and it's pretty much in bold, this is the actual installer. It's actually an executable file. And you can kind of just ignore some of the other stuff down here. All right. And then RStudio, and the reason I have you download both, as you'll see here in a minute, the bare bones R program, but completely functional, and you can do everything that you want to do basically in R that you can do in RStudio. But RStudio, while it's not a true GUI, it's not like a point and click menu system like SPSS, it is this integrated development environment so that you have the ability to sort of write code, see the output, you've got direct access to the help window. So it's a little bit like being in SAS, or that SAS environment where you have your log window, your output window, a programming window. It's very similar look and feel, and they keep adding more to it. So the guys are doing for the fact that this is free, just blows my mind, the amount of stuff, and just the amount of stuff literally that's changed in the last 12 months has been awesome. So, and I got to meet Hadley Wickham last summer, who's the chief scientist, or chief, yeah, at RStudio. Really cool guy. All right. There's some other resources, and so when I first did this, if you guys haven't heard of it, DataCamp, by the way, has a ton of really good stuff for not just R, but all kinds of software and tools and things out there. Usually there's a free module, and sometimes it's like you can take the first module for free, and then if you want to take all 10 or whatever, then you got to pay a little bit. But they have a lot of free stuff out there. Try R. This was one that I know I encouraged a lot of people to take a look at. So this is done by O'Reilly. Have you guys ever seen any textbooks by O'Reilly? They tend to be more software, so if you don't do a lot with software, you probably don't read a lot of O'Reilly. But they have, and it's actually kind of cool. So if you create an account here, you get to go through each module, and this is completely free. It's all online. You don't have to have the software running. So you can actually log in and start learning R just inside the browser. So as an example here, like if I click on this first one with syntax, it'll pop up and go, great, let's get started. You click continue, and it'll say, okay, let's try just some basic math. Type in 1 + 1. There you go. You get 2. And then it like walks you through step by step. And if you make a typo, so if I did RMAT and forget to put notice it says don't forget the quotes, it'll come back and go, did you remember the quotes? So it kind of has some helpful feedback. Anyway, so I encourage you to take a look at this. If you actually sign in and give it an email and create your own account, then at the end you get these little badges, and it's kind of fun. Let's see. RStudio itself provides a ton of online learning and tutorials. The UCLA website, by the way, for you guys, this is great for anything you do statistics related. It's got tutorials for SAS, SPSS, Data, R, M+, you name it. Swirl is something else, and I'm going to play with this myself later on because you can actually write. So kind of like this Code School, which is all online, you can use this package called Swirl, and it'll actually run little tutorials inside R. So that's kind of cool. And so you can use it both as a student as well as a teacher. So like I could use Swirl to create courses that are taught inside R. So I'm just still reading through the documentation. Quick R is also awesome. So this would be one, if you really start getting into it, just go ahead and add this to your favorites bar because it has a lot of really quick, easy answers. So sometimes things that are hard to find in the help menu, sometimes I can find the answer immediately at Quick R. And he's written this book called R in Action. I have a copy of it. I think Vicky has a copy of it. Anyway, it's a really well done book. And then there's a whole bunch of other places. So there's the Quick R, there's blog posts on how to find R, there's a mailing list here. The other thing is, any of you guys ever heard of Stack Overflow? So if you do anything in software and coding, Stack Overflow is a place that has tons. It's a little bit like a lot of these other sort of clearinghouses, like Reddit has lots of news articles and blogs and things. So this is like a clearinghouse for software questions and things like that. So I find a ton of answers on Stack Overflow, and you can post questions here. So like if you just get completely confused, and you can like log in and say, I'm new to R, I tried this, I've looked a couple of places, I can't figure this out. Sometimes you'll get an answer back in minutes. I mean, it's like people have nothing better to do than sit on Stack Overflow and answer questions. But, you're throwing it out to the world, so, and people are pretty nice for the most part. Yeah, exactly. As a matter of fact, there's something I'm trying to figure out the most efficient way to do something right now, and I can make it work, but it's just ugly, and I'm tempted to post it out there on Stack Overflow and go, okay, look, I know this is not pretty code, can somebody help me make this night better? So, okay. So this has all of the notes for what we're going to do, and I'm basically going to have you guys go through a series of little exercises, and we're going to use the basic R program, and then we'll do the same thing again inside RStudio, just so you can see the benefits and the trade-offs. All right, any questions? Cool. One last thing to show you is I've got an account now on GitHub, which is it's a cloud storage. That's one way it's a repository. The other thing that's fabulous about it is that it does version control and stuff, so I can there's a client that I download on my desktop, so if I'm developing something, I can have it on my local computer and it's immediately backed up to the cloud. So, it's a little bit like syncing Dropbox or Emerybox, but it's more than just a file server, because inside here, so like I've built a repository for these workshops, and this has all of the code and all of the documentation. So this website basically feeds this website. So as I'm doing stuff in R and creating these different pages in my book, they get posted here and then automatically update the book online. The other thing that's helpful here, and I'll be sending out more instructions, is that, for example, inside this directory, I've actually got a copy of the R code that we'll be doing today. So, I can send that link out if you guys want to download, and it's too hard to follow along, you don't want to have to cut and paste it out of the website, you can actually download the raw stuff right here. So I'll be sending information out on how to do that. The other thing is, for those of you that, just in terms of file management, one of the cool things about this is that if you start looking out here and you find somebody's website or their project that's interesting, I could actually go out and say, hey, I really liked your package, but I think it would be cool if we added this function. You can become a contributor and they'll add you in. So it's like you can find projects and people to work with and collaborate, and you can write, people use this for writing books, collaborating on projects. Anyway, so I may eventually have a workshop at some time on GitHub, but anyhow. Okay, so if you've got the software installed, and everybody's desktop is going to look different. So when you install R, and I don't know if I can rearrange my icons here a little bit, it actually usually installs both of these links. I can't remember what the i386 is, but I usually run the 64-bit. Either one will work. The other place it usually installs is in wherever your startup menu is. It'll usually install under a heading of just R. So those are the defaults. All right. So this is what it looks like. It's very bare bones. There's absolutely no information. It just pops open and you get a console window. So you really kind of have to know what you're doing. There's no hand holding here. And the other thing it'll tell you when it starts is it gives you information about the software and which version. So like I literally just went through this download and installation in the last few days just because I wanted, since I got a new computer, I wanted to go back through it all the way from the beginning and record the whole thing so that I could remember where all of the gotchas were and the little updates that sneak up that you forget about. So the version I'm running is 3.2.3, which is Wooden Christmas Tree. They all have names. How many of you guys have like Android phones? You ever look to see which version or flavor of Android you're running, and it'll tell you which, anyway, some are Lollipop and Cupcake, and they have bizarre names. What? Ice cream sandwich. Yeah, so anyhow, all I can say is computer programmers, they have weird senses of humor. Anyhow, so your version may not be exactly the same, and that's okay. And I don't know, they may have different names on the Mac too. Okay, so let me open back up the little window here. It's going to be hard for me to have both of these open at the same time. Let's see. I wonder if I can. I'm going to see if I can get it so I have stuff here on this same window. All right. So you can kind of move things around a little bit. The one thing to notice, and for right now we just have this little console window. So you have the main R window, and then inside that it's going to pop up other windows. So there's like a console window. Eventually I might have a graphics window. I could have an error window, a view window, and they'll just sort of float around. So just be aware of that. But it's all inside the primary main window here. So like I can't take this and drag it outside of that. It only exists inside this main R window. So that was something that was a little confusing to me when I first started because I was like, why can't I move this? Anyway. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to have you guys do, and this is a good exercise to always do, like a lot of software, it wants to know where your home directory is. So like if you've taken a SAS class next door, usually one of the first things we had the students do, and Biostats 500 was make sure that you've got everything configured so that you remember to save all of your work to your home directory. R is very similar. You can actually set this stuff up. There's an initialization file that you can configure, but I think it's helpful to always kind of walk through this process because today I might be working on project A and I'm working on project A's directory, but tomorrow I'm in project B, or maybe I'm working on my advisor's project over here, but then I have a separate one for my master's thesis or dissertation, or if you're like me, you've got 80,000 projects open, and then you're like, you save your file and go home and somebody goes, can you send that file to me? And I'm like, I can't find it. It's because I had another window open and it saved in that window, and then I have to go find it. So it's always good to go through this and make sure you're in the directory you want to be in. So one of the first commands is this get working directory, and so it's just get WD. I don't know if it'll let me change the font here. Let's see. Trying to see if I can get my GUI preferences. Let's see if I can make my font just a little bit bigger. Apply. Yes. Is that better? Okay, great. All right. Okay, so get working directory. And the other thing you'll notice here is that I can't just type get WD. The parentheses are important because everything inside R is an object, including the functions. So functions always assume that you've got some additional parameters, and so that's why I put the parentheses. So it just says run get working directory with all the defaults. There's really not ever going to be anything we're going to change here, but if I don't specify anything in the parentheses, it just works. But if I did this, it's actually going to come back and give me information about the object get working directory, so it's telling me it's a function object. So if you ever do something like that and you're like, okay, that looks wrong, when you do that, it actually runs the command. So this tells me that I'm in my default directory, which I haven't changed this, so it's defaulting to basically my users documents folder, which is not where I want to be. So I'm actually going to be in this, I've created a directory called myr, and then I've got Spring Workshop. So you have to create the directory on your computer before you change directories to it. There is a way, there's some system commands that you could actually do it on the fly, but I'm not going to show you guys those for right now. So figure out what directory you want, and I'm going to show you a little quirk. I don't know if this is true on a Mac, but it's definitely true on a PC. So the directory that I'm using is this myr Spring Workshop, and I know it's a little small here, but on a PC, make sure I do the slashes the right way. If you're in the directory, the slashes go, what's that, a backslash? So this is like the Windows File Explorer. But R is going to want to see it with the slashes going the other way. Does it do that on a Mac? Which way I don't know which way the slashes go on a Mac. This way? So this is why, and I can't remember what this is called, so this is okay on a Mac. This is okay on Unix. PCs just have to be different. So just know if you're on a PC and you find your directory, you can cut and paste that and say, now we're going to say set working directory. And since this is a long string, long set of characters, we actually put those in quotations so that R understands this is a string of text. And then I have to come back, shoot, hit the wrong button. Sorry, let me try this again. And things like quotations and brackets or parentheses, if you have one on one side, you always have to close it. Otherwise, it'll just sit there and fuss at you and go, you're missing something. So just be aware, and it takes too long to really explain, but this is a special character in R and it gets confused, so you have to flip it. All right, so a little minor thing there. Oh, I still typed it wrong. Usually, if you get an error, it'll be something pretty obvious. Can't find the function set. Means I typed something wrong. It's set WD, which is the set working directory. And the way to tell, I need to turn all this stuff off. Somebody's adding a bunch of stuff to Dropbox. Okay. To tell that this worked is we'll just run get working directory again. So now you can tell that it's changed. And I know this seems trivial, but trust me, this kind of stuff will drive you insane. It's just better to deal with it up front. The other thing that's helpful is now that I've typed in a bunch of commands, I can actually use my up and down arrow keys and it'll bring back that series of commands. By the way, you can do this if you've ever opened the command window on your PC. You can actually do that, and as you type in commands, not that you are probably typing a lot of commands in the command shell, but anyway, that works too. And that's kind of handy if you've had a long string and you don't want to, you've typed something that's like this long and you're like, oh God, I don't want to have to type that again. You can just page up and then go back and edit what you had before. I can't remember if you can do that in SAS or not, but anyway.